protest today?
So we chose to come out today in particular because on Monday is the start of 2 weeks of international negotiations in Poland. 3 years on from the Paris Climate Agreement, these negotiations are supposed to be deciding the rule book for the Paris Agreement. So they're really important, but it's really challenging because we've now got, since Paris, we've got Trump, we've got Bolsonaro in Brazil. Talks themselves are being held in a country which is incredibly dependent on coal. They're even being sponsored, 3 of the 6 sponsors are coal companies. So we thought it was really important to get out here and not just tell our own government what we think of their failures to act on climate change, but also we sent a message of solidarity. We had Polish chants and videoed those to send over to people who are organising the march in Katowice in Poland.
And what do you want the government to do about climate change?
Well, it's clear from the report that scientists brought out recently that to avoid climate catastrophe, we need to act really rapidly and we need to transform everything. And that's what needs to happen, is that climate change needs to be the priority. But there's actually some really easy stuff that the government could do straight away. A lot of people don't know that it's government policy to have a ban on any new onshore wind farms in England. They do not need to be pushing fracking. We do not need a 3rd runway at Heathrow. You can put the cash into sustainable transport instead. There's lots of stuff that can be done right now.
And what do you think the general public can do to help?
Well, there's lots of things you can do, and I think some of the most important are to campaign, so you can write to your own MP, put more pressure on politicians, also the local authority companies that are, for example, sourcing wood that's been deforested, because we're worried about the Amazon, but actually a lot of the products from places come over the Western world. And in your own home, you can make sure you're not banking with a bank that funds fossil fuels. You can switch to a renewable energy provider. And I think a lot of it is talking to people around you and raising awareness of just how urgent the climate crisis is.
What are the reasons why you are protesting today for the climate change march?
Today's specific reason is started outside the Polish embassy about the problems caused by the coal-powered fire stations in Poland, and that people have been protesting over there, and that unfortunately our governments across the world aren't taking climate change seriously. If they were, they would be moving the investments that they hold on our behalf into renewable energies. And today's protest is part of a number of different actions that are all aligned with the issue of bringing urgent attention to climate change.
So what motivated you to come here today?
That unfortunately there is a reason to bring attention to climate change every single day. So unfortunately we could bring attention to a problem to do with climate change on a daily basis. That's how big the problem is. Whether you want to speak locally about pollution problems and illness caused by pollution in our cities, or you want to speak internationally about extinction and the amount of our ecosystem that's under threat from this system of pollution and resource extraction. So at the moment in particular, our government has allowed subsidies to go to a power station called Drax. Now they were a coal power station. They've shut that down, opened up next door a wood-powered power station that is dependent on cutting trees down in America, old growth trees that take carbon out of the atmosphere, and they take that wood and ship it to Yorkshire, where Drax is, and burn it instead of burning coal. As you can imagine, that is no reduction in the carbon footprint. So we have a serious problem when the government is willing to fake a carbon reduction like that and use our subsidies to fool us. And that's a real issue we have no trust in the government after them doing that.
And what do you want the government to do to help reduce climate change? Like, do you want them to put forward legislation?
Yeah, we need legislation on all sides to do with the waste of products, to do with unsustainable fuels like the fracking that's been invested across England. That is a crazy threat and risk to local communities, as well as being a fairly redundant form of energy in terms of carbon footprint. So we need investment into renewables into local areas.
Reason for coming to the protest today?
Maybe have some pictures taken of my costume and maybe they get some press coverage.
And what is the main issue of climate change that you want to kind of be dealt with?
Well, don't believe, or don't spend too long listening to people who talk about, oh, what if we block the sun out with sulfur aerosols, that sort of thing, because climate change is not just where the planet gets hotter, it's also ocean acidification, which is down to carbon dioxide. So everything comes back to emissions of greenhouse gases, and there's no simple fix, as there are so many angles to this, so many different sources of each of the different gases, and so many things we have to deal with.
What's your sign about? I've noticed, is that French?
Yeah, so I was trying to do a send-up of the protests that have been going on in France the last 3 Saturdays.
It's about the diesel.
Against the price rise on, against the tax rise on diesel, which still don't make diesel as expensive there as it is here.
And what do you want the government to do about climate change?
The government's got to talk the talk. It's got to be telling people that climate change matters and has to be factored into everything, into all policy. And ultimately, we need a system of fair economic instruments so that people are encouraged through their behaviour, not just now and again, but because it makes financial sense to them to curb their emissions and also be more resource efficient. And these economic instruments have to be fair. If you just increase taxes, I mean, as we've seen in France, if you're just going to increase taxes, people think, oh, it's just an excuse for the government to make money. If it's done in a way where people can see it's centred on the individual, such as if you have a system of personal carbon allowances, whereby people pay less tax on the first X units of carbon they consume or responsible for producing, people will be able to see, well, that's fair, so we all get to do a bit of polluting because everyone does anyway. It's not, they'll see that it's not something that's just going to squeeze the poor and the rich won't feel so much.
What's your reason for coming to the protest today?
I guess we've tried every other way of getting change, and this feels like it's our only option now, is to start to demonstrate and maybe be a bit more rebellious. Pardon? The government, no, I don't think they're listening. Despite the fact that they say they believe climate change is man-made, they are supporting fracking, they're not doing enough. So, yeah, no, they're not listening, and that's why we're here.
Do you think you could have changed though in the end?
I guess I wouldn't be here otherwise. It's either it changes or we don't exist.
What do you think should be done?
What do you think should be done?
I think the first thing they need to do is get the message out to the public. The media needs to play a huge part in doing that, and the government needs to help them to do that. That is really important. And then once the public are on side, they will understand they need the cars, they need to use public transport. So that,
Switch to renewable energies, limit their meat consumption, not fry so much. There's so much that we can do, but I think until the message gets out there, people don't realise how serious it is. We've only got 12 years until we have to be carbon neutral, or we are completely screwed. So yeah.
Do you want more of like the public to get involved? Obviously, we talk about meat reduction things, and that kind of like people aren't really aware of that.
Yeah.
So we want to like raise awareness of that, so that more people can get
It's
involved.
really important. I mean, the fortunate thing is that is really taking off now. There's a huge rise in vegetarianism and veganism. People are starting to get to understand that, it feels like, but that's only a tiny part of the answer. There's so much more. So spread your message far and wide.
Perfectly safe
This is made by my friend.
What is the main reason for protesting today? Why you personally have come here?
Well, it's a moral duty we have to encourage governments to clean up their act. We want a clean life, we want clean water, we want clean air, we want our children and our grandchildren, I'm a new granddad, to have the same quality of life that we have, but governments are not listening to us. So we have to take to the streets and try and encourage them to make the sensible decisions on our behalf.
And what do you want the government to do?
Well, they should certainly be world leaders in terms of cleaning up how we produce energy. Stop digging for coal, stop digging for gas, clean up our waters, climate justice as well. So we need to bear in mind the poorer people in our society. And the whole list. Yeah.
And what do you think the next step should be if the government don't do anything? Like, would you carry on protesting?
Absolutely, yeah. We'll carry on protesting. The movement of people will get higher and higher. It'll get more and more people on the streets as things like bad weather, storms increase, the ice at both ends of the globe melts. People start to lose their livelihoods because of climate change. It'll carry on.
what do you think social media, the media should do to influence global warming?
The media should report accurately what's going on instead of always reporting what the big systems want. So they need to be honest, transparent and straightforward about how they report without a bias. Yeah.
And do you think there are enough people in today's society who care about climate change?
It's growing all the time. On the whole, people want an easy life. They haven't got time to think about climate change, climate justice. So it's down to a small bunch of people to make a lot of noise like today, but it's going to grow. But the big changes have to come top down from the government, because it's all very well you and me sort of recycling and doing our little bit, but if our neighbours don't, or if the next country doesn't, or the next continent doesn't, then we're back to square one. So it's got to come down from the top. Governments have got to say, we must do this, we must do that.
Do you think you should protest around the country to make sure the whole country is aware of it?
Yeah. I mean, this is London because it's Downing Street here, but it's going to be, it's everywhere. And it's not just these people, there's all kinds of organisations everywhere. It's grassroots. It's a grassroots movement.